see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, before we get into today's video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. That way you don't miss anything. Also, make sure you hit that like button because it really helps us out in the algorithm, and make sure this video gets seen by way more people. And yeah, hey, it's free. But that said, we're gonna be talking about, with full spoilers, Absolute Superman #1. And this one is a pretty interesting one. This is one that just as different as the Absolute Wonder Woman and Absolute Batman comics are from their like Earth Prime counterparts. This one is also very different, and for reasons that I wasn't really 100% expecting. For one, let's go ahead and just jump into why this Superman is so very different. This is not a, as we know, Superman, being born on Krypton, Krypton's destruction, and as a baby, he shipped off from Krypton to Earth, lands in the field, Ma, Pa, Kent, all that stuff. He gets the upbringing, the traditional American upbringing, and becomes a superhero. Truth, justice, the American way, or at least truth and justice. You can't really say the American way as much anymore these days. That said, in this is very different. For one, the S on Superman's chest is not like the symbol of the House of El. It's not a symbol that means hope.
It's not an S. On my world, it means hope.
It's a symbol that means you are on the lowest rung of the social economic ladder. You are a laborer, and by rights are lesser than everyone else. The S is worn by people who work in service to other people, whether it's as a janitor or as a miner or whatever the case may be. You are a service person, and therefore you are less than everyone else. So that kind of paints a new dynamic on this Superman, that he is wearing the symbol of someone who is the everyday working class person. Basically, he is a fighter for the people. He believes in people, no differently really than the Superman that we are accustomed to. Just his feeling this way is for very different reasons, and this is very likely because he has witnessed his parents go through some very strange things. And that's another thing that's very different about this Superman. This Superman did not grow up with Ma and Pa Kent. As a matter of fact, it's safe to say that when he first came to Earth, he was probably already good and grown. Now, we don't get to see his actual arrival on Earth in this issue. As a matter of fact, what we see is that his parents, who wear the S on their chest that signifies them as being the lowest of the low, we learn that these are people who actually came from the higher classes, but because they either criticized the upper class people or pointed out the flaws in Kryptonian society, take your pick, whichever one it is, they were ostracized from the rest of Kryptonian society and bust down all the way to the lowest rung of the ladder, despite the fact that they came from prestigious houses. When we're introduced to Superman's mother, Lara El, it's revealed that when she was 9 years old, she wrote a paper that basically criticized the fact that Kryptonians don't try to explore the stars and learn what else is out there in the universe. And since this was criticism of her people, at 9 years old, she was bussed down to the lowest caste. And in the case of Jor-El, he criticized the way that things were done, and for his trouble, also the saying, he was actually prepared to move up. He was actually prepared to take one of the most prestigious jobs, and he was kicked out of it because he opened his big fat mouth. And it just is one of those things like, the nail that sticks out gets hammered. It's that kind of a society. And now, all at the same time, Kal-El has witnessed some of the hardships of his parents, because this isn't a Kal-El who grew up on a foreign, an alien planet to himself. This is a Kal-El who grew up with his parents. By the time we see Kal-El as a kid, in this, we see that he's probably at the very least 9 or 10 years old, most likely. Maybe 7 or 8 at the youngest, but I'm gonna go on a limb and say he's probably like 9 or 10 years old by the time we see him at the end of this issue. and he was raised with his parents. The destruction that befell Krypton did not happen when he was a baby, though it is in the process of happening now. It's just taking longer for it to happen. And yeah, he's witnessed all these things. He's lived on a world where they have to pay for rain. To get rainfall to happen for farmers, they have to pay for it. It's not something that happens just naturally and normally for them. He's witnessed his parents have to work hard just to maintain the little that they have, and effectively living not necessarily on what is like a farm, but he's living almost a similar life as to what he would have led on Earth with Ma and Pa Kent, but now he's getting to have it with his actual birth parents, but for very different reasons. Now, the events that lead to Krypton's destruction and what brings him to Earth, what brings Kal-El to Earth, and he becomes Superman, those things are just tweaked and nudged around just a little bit. But we don't really know the exact point of Krypton's destruction, but I'm sure it happened when he was pretty young. Just maybe not quite right away, but we do see it occurring, like it's about to happen by the time we get to the end of the issue. And when we focus on him while he's on Earth, he's already at least a young man, like at least in his late teens, potentially maybe his early 20s at the most. And yeah, he's got like the different haircut, which honestly, the more I look at it, especially seeing like who he is and how he deals with things. Initially, I thought, oh, they're trying to go for this kind of like modernized, kind of almost emo-ish kind of dude. It's not really. It's just a young man's haircut that probably doesn't brush his hair as often as he probably should. And that's really it. There's really nothing more to it than that. But this is also Superman who still believes in the core values that Superman, as we know him, would believe in. It's just that he believes in them for very different reasons. That's really the most major difference. Probably of any of the characters, he's probably the least changed. More of his changes come in the forms of his powers, where under normal circumstances, Superman is powered by Earth's yellow sun, and he just naturally absorbs yellow sun energy. In this, it doesn't seem like he either A, doesn't have the ability to absorb this energy under normal circumstances, or like he hasn't learned how to, or because of his sleep schedule, he's not able to go out and get yellow sun energy. He's also been spending a lot of time in mines, so that may or may not have something to do with it, but he's, for whatever reason, not absorbing yellow sun energy. He is having to have this energy fed into him, almost as if he were like a Green Lantern power ring. He has to constantly be recharged once he uses his energy up. This is effectively a weakness that he now has that is not the typical, hey, there's green rocks nearby, I don't feel so good. Like, it's one of those situations. He is in a predicament where he has to recharge ever so often. And this effectively keeps him from being some god tier level superhero and maybe brings him down to earth just a little bit. Other than that, he does seem to have a lot of the other abilities we would typically associate with Clark Kent Earth Prime Superman. It just, I think the major difference being we don't really see him fly in this issue, but I think that's maybe something we might see later. He's probably still learning all of his powers and abilities. He also does seem to have the whole solar flare thing from the New 52. Like, he has something very similar, but a lot of his power is probably predicated on the fact that he doesn't really know how to control these things, and he's using a Kryptonian suit in order to help regulate his powers. This is an artificially intelligent suit that is actually helping charge his cells and also getting him through his day-to-day. It's pretty interesting. Like, it's the probably most radically different thing about this version of Superman other than his cape, which apparently is made out of the last dust particles of Krypton. So yeah. But anyway, I like it. I like what they're doing with this. I like the fact this is a Superman who he still wants to do the right thing. Like, I was actually worried going into this that, because they say, oh, he didn't have Ma and Pa Kent, so it's gonna be a radically different Superman. I was worried he was gonna be one of these guys like, oh, I don't want to save the world, I just want to watch the world burn. Oh, I don't want to be involved, even though I have the power to change things. No, they're not doing that with this. This is a guy who still wants to help. He is still helping the people in Brazil, the very same people who have the jack-booted foot of the Peacemakers and the Lazarus Corporation bearing down on their neck. He's trying to help these people and try to make their lives easier while they're living under occupation and being forced to work in what is effectively slave-like situations. It's pretty bad, and honestly not too dissimilar for some things that actually do happen in the real world. But yeah, Superman just he's trying to make their lives easier as best as he can without drawing a lot of attention to himself. And yeah, it's wild. I like it though. I really like it a lot. I think that once again, this is I wasn't sure about this book. I really wasn't. And having read that first issue, I gotta admit, I was wrong about the Absolute Universe thus far. So far, we've had 3 titles release #1 issues. And while I was not really worried about the Wonder Woman one, I was very vocal about the fact that I was very worried about the Batman and Superman ones. And Absolute Batman has come out. Absolute Superman has now come out. And I'm gonna shut the fuck up. Because clearly, DC knew what they were doing on this one. I was actually worried because I'm not gonna lie, for me, where a lot of my trepidation came from is the fact that the Ultimate Universe and Marvel came out, and while it did seem like it was gonna be something cool at first, I have ultimately not enjoyed it very much. Because it's just, I don't know, it's something about it, and it's just, I think not to say that it's bad, it's not for me, is what it is. And that's really what it is. It's not you, it's me. But I don't know what it is, but here, DC has a handle on this, and just based on some things I've heard, some musings I've heard about some of the other Absolute titles, I feel justified in my interest in an Absolute Flash or an Absolute Green Lantern or an Absolute Martian Manhunter. I feel more justified in that. So yeah, this is great. I like this. I like what's going on here. I like the fact that they're even doing something different in terms of Lois Lane. In this, Lois Lane is one of the most popular Superman characters out there, just about. She's a household name. Even people who don't read comics know who Lois Lane is. They've done something different with her, which is kind of funny. They kind of Steve Trevored her. Like, she's not a journalist in this universe, but she is a soldier for the Lazarus Corporation in direct opposition of Superman. And I wonder whether or not, and I'm pretty sure they will, but I do wonder, when I got to that final, one of the final pages of the issue, I was like, man, are they gonna do a deal where there is no will they or won't they? Like, is Lois 100% bought in? Maybe it could, maybe possibly. Oh, and then we also have to take into consideration that this is a different Superman, this is a different Lois, and maybe it's not for them to be together. I mean, once again, I feel like in any universe, it's almost always going to happen, unless you're the New 52. Unless you're the New 52, then you'll end up with an Absolute Wonder Woman. But no, I also like what they did with Brainiac, because we don't see Brainiac's face, but we see this is a very different Brainiac than what we're used to. It seems like this Brainiac might not even be alien in origin. Maybe he is, but for whatever reason, he doesn't seem to know what Superman is. So he's a version of Brainiac that maybe doesn't hail from Krypton. Maybe he's something that comes from Earth. It's hard to say at this point, but he does seem to have the same penchant for putting, civilizations of people in glass bottles, shrinking them down, putting them in the glass bottle, moving on with his day. Part of me even wonders if Brainiac in this universe turns out to be Lex Luthor. But once again, we'll have to play the waiting game to see. But yeah, this issue is fantastic. I should have known better. It's Jason Aaron, the guy who wrote what is arguably one of the best Thor runs in history. You can at me if you want. I don't care. You get out of here. I don't know. We don't care. But yeah. Hey, right now Jason Aaron is cooking. Ninja Turtles is cooking. Absolute Superman is cooking. I'm here for it. Yeah. Jason Aaron we trust.